A few years ago, when I was 11, girl, and my brother was 6, a new person started being seen in the neighborhood. I know in most places that's not a big deal, but we live in a really small town. Everyone knows everyone else and their business, and all the kids play together even though we're all different age groups. No one had seen this guy before. He was probably around 40, had long ratty hair, scruffy face, and an old dirty jacket. Nothing weird happened, but it was just strange that no one had seen him before. A few weeks went by, and at least once every other day me and my friends would see him somewhere, just walking around the neighborhood while we rode our bikes or played tag up and down the streets. Still, nothing really strange about it. Then one day, me, my brother, and 2 older boys in the neighborhood, 13 and 14, were walking down the train tracks in the woods that stretch behind all our houses. We thought we could hear walking behind us, but everyone goes down there to walk their dogs, so we didn't care at first. The footsteps, however, kept getting louder and faster, until finally the older boy turned around and saw the guy jogging in our direction. He told us to run down the path towards his backyard and tried to talk to the guy. The guy just kept jogging and didn't say anything, moving right past him towards us. We all ran to the boy's house and told his parents. They called the cops, and shortly after, 2 police came and talked to us and searched around the tracks. They said they didn't find anyone, but could see some footprints that looked like an adult that had been running in the other direction, away from the houses. They said we did the right thing, and if anything weird happened, to tell the adult and call again. A week or so went by, and we still didn't see the strange man. Until one day, me and my brother were playing in the backyard, and I heard something in the woods. I looked over, and I could see the guy in the bushes watching us. I screamed. My stepdad came outside, and the guy was once again gone. My stepdad called the police. They came and pretty much said the same things as before. A few more days went by, and still no one saw the strange man. One afternoon, my stepdad took me and my brother into the woods to go play on a big rope swing that had been there forever. The rope swing was deep in the woods on the opposite side of the tracks from where our house was. We were playing there for a while, and we heard footsteps walking down the tracks, just like before. They stopped close to the path to the rope swing, and then we heard rustling in the bushes. My stepdad grabbed me, told me very calmly and quietly to take my brother and go down a different path that led to the next street, run to the store that was close by, and wait there for him. I took my brother and made him walk in front of me. Just before we turned around a bend, I looked back in time to see my stepdad walking towards the noise. He pulled something out of his jacket and gave it a flick. It looked from that distance like a big collapsible metal billy club sort of thing. He kept walking, and I ran to the store. We went inside. I got some ice cream for my little brother and told Linda, the lady who worked there, what happened. She told us to sit down and made a phone call of her own. I thought she called the police at the time, but now I'm not so sure. Thinking about it now, I believe she actually called my stepdad. She talked on the phone for a few seconds and then hung up. She looked worried, but relieved at the same time. She told us to stay there and that everything was going to be okay. About an hour later, my stepdad came into the store. He hugged us, talked to Linda quietly, and then took us home. I asked him what happened, and all he said was, "It's all good. Everything's fine now." No one's seen that strange guy since. This post is short and sweet and to the point. It's been the only time I was truly in danger. I was around 6 years old. My family and I were just leaving the supermarket. I was begging my mom for some candy, and by the time we left, I didn't get any, so I threw a huge fit. I started stomping and crying at the exit and threatened my mom that I wouldn't leave without getting any. She said, "Fine, stay here then," and left me at the exit. This made me cry and scream even louder. As she was getting closer to the car, a strange man approached me. He just said these simple words: "Get in my van, boy. We will catch her." I stopped crying immediately, as I knew by then what stranger danger was. I looked at the guy and knew something bad would happen if I went with him. My mom quickly rushed back, grabbed my hand, and yanked me away. She didn't say a word to the man, but she gave him a death glare. Needless to say, I was quiet the whole ride back home. I'm not sure what would have happened if my mom decided to pack the groceries before she came back to get me from my little fit. I know this is short, and anything could have happened, but I still remember those words all these years later. Halloween Shadows by Dr. Magpie. Halloween is my favorite holiday. Is, not was, despite the events that unfolded one crisp Hallows Eve when I was about 16. At the time, I lived with my parents, younger brother, older stepbrother, and cousin in a big but old house that sat in a cul-de-sac close to Main Street. Beside it ran an alleyway flanked by apartments, and it had a huge yard that my basement bedroom looked out on. We lived in a small town. Crime seemed minimal in the area, and I'd made my way out that Halloween night to make the most of the best day of the year. It wasn't just what happened that night, though. It was, of course, what came after, and one small incident that came before. A few days before Halloween, my stepmother and cousin arrived home to discover a pickup truck full of guys taking photos of our house. Weird. But when I approached, the men seemed friendly and complimented our Halloween setup. It was pretty great, that is true. The men sped off without incident and were quickly forgotten. My stepbrother and cousin re-entered the story Halloween night, the big event itself, at about 3 a.m. Both had been out drinking with their friends, and as such, both had left their respective vehicles and braved the icy walk home on their own. Cousin arrived home first, but couldn't seem to get his key in the lock, so just sat on the porch bench and waited for my stepbrother to show up. He did, about a half an hour later. After having a bit of a laugh at my cousin for being an uncoordinated goober, he went to unlock the door himself, and no luck. So they bit the bullet and called my mom, waking her up to let them in. She was, of course, unimpressed to be opening the door for a pair of drunk idiots at this time of the night, and didn't buy their story either about a wonky lock. They insisted, though, and to shut them up, she finally relented and tried her key. She, too, could not get her key into the lock. Annoyed, tired, and just now confused, she wrote it off as a problem, and the three of them hit their respective hay. One other person arrived home late that night. Me, though I arrived much earlier than those two, and was in bed by about midnight. I woke up close to 1 a.m. Still tired, all I could feel was anxiety, and I didn't know why. At first, I tried to tell myself that I'd just gotten a bit too into the holiday spirit and had psyched myself out. But then I noticed a shadow. It was perfectly man-shaped and cast upon my window. I turned on my bedside lamp, blinked, and it was gone. It wasn't unusual, mind you, to see shadows of people harmlessly walking through the alley, and I told myself that's all there was to it. Then there was what happened next. I came home from school the next day. My parents were there. So was a locksmith. And so were the police. My parents were there, well, because that's where they lived. The locksmith was there because my mother had called him, as the confusion over the broken lock persisted. The cops were there because the locksmith and my parents had called them, when the locksmith proceeded to pull the tip of a knife out of our lock. I was relieved to see that's where the knife tip had ended up, though, as they discovered 2 of our window screens had been slashed. One on our garage, and one on my bedroom window. In 2012, I worked at a tanning salon in a strip mall. It was across the street from a Walmart that was always crawling with strange people. The strip mall that my salon was located in was poorly lit at night. There was a sushi restaurant and an auto zone, but other than that, the other stores were vacant. We were open until 10 p.m., while the other 2 businesses closed around 8 or 9, I think. The salon was never overwhelmingly busy, so there was always one person working at a time. My best friend also worked at the company, and the salon she worked at was a 15-minute drive from mine. This detail is important later. I'm a night owl, so I worked the 3 to 10 p.m. shift every weeknight. At some point in time, I started getting little strange phone calls at 8 p.m. every night. It started off strange, but nothing to be alarmed about. The first time he called went something like this. Caller. Hi, I'm conducting a survey on women's shopping habits, and I figured calling a tanning salon run by a woman would be a good place to start. We also send out a gift if you participate in our little survey, so... Okay. Do you typically wear jeans, yoga pants, leggings, skirts, shorts, or dresses? Feel free to list which of each you wear. I wear all of those. Great! Now, when you wear dresses or skirts, do you ever wear pantyhose? Not unless it's winter. So, how many tights or pantyhose do you own? I have no idea. Like 5? That is great, great. So would you be interested in us sending you some free pantyhose? I'm not really interested. I don't wear them enough to care, really. Oh, I totally understand. Would it be okay if I call you for a survey in the future? Sure. When do you typically work? Every weeknight. Great, great. Talk soon. I shouldn't have given some random person my work schedule, but they were already calling my job, so there was no denying this person could find me if they wanted. Honestly, I didn't think anything weird about the call at the time. Later that month, we had a store meeting, and the weekend sales associate said that she had gotten a few weird calls herself from a guy breathing heavily and asking her questions. She didn't go into detail, so I didn't make the connection. The next few times the man called me seemed normal enough. One survey was on skirts and skirt length and brands. The next was about dresses and their lengths and brands. He kept offering to send me pantyhose, though. I kept telling him I didn't wear them, and he always said, "Okay, I just want to make sure I'm offering them after every call, as it's protocol." Then, the last survey he called to have me do really scared me. When you wear dresses and skirts, do you wear panties? Yes. What material are they? Silk, satin, cotton, lace? I'm not really comfortable with this. I think I'm done with these surveys. Oh, come on. I just want to know what you wear under that dress. I'll bring you some panties and nylons right now. No, thank you. Please do not come here. Goodbye. I hung up, freaked out. I called my friend at the other salon and told her about what had just happened. She told me the same guy had been calling her location, trying to talk to girls about pantyhose and panties chew. She said that he had even described to one girl what she was doing while she was on the phone with him. The salon she worked at had glass front windows with the desk facing towards the window. My salon also had a glass storefront, but the desk faced the wall. The next few nights were hell. He realized we weren't picking up the calls anymore unless he blocked the number. We had to answer blocked calls because if it was another customer and they complained, we would be in trouble. He started calling, changing up the time every night he called, spoofing numbers, etc. His calls were getting creepier and creepier. Heavy breathing, telling us what we were wearing, saying he was picturing us in our panties. Really creepy stuff. I was afraid to be at work. I made sure to be on the phone with my friend from the other salon every night for my last hour or so. One day the calls just stopped. I will never know if this next incident is related, but I will forever think it is. My salon had a waiting area by the desk when you walked in, and then it had a very long hallway with about 20 rooms. The last 2 rooms were the spray tan rooms, which needed to be sprayed down each night at close. At the very end of the hallway was a door leading to the dumpsters in the back. To the left of that door was the washer and dryer for used towels and such. At a tanning salon, you generally have the same kind of people. Women of all shapes and sizes, metrosexual men, buff men, guys who come in being dragged by their girlfriends, and middle-aged newly divorced men with nice clothes. You never see overweight, dirty, middle-aged men coming in to get their tan on. This particular night, 20 minutes to close, a guy fitting that very description walked in. My heart sank. I had the most intense feeling that this was the creep. I tried to act normal, asking him his last name. I've never been here before. Okay. I explained to him how much a single tan on a regular night cost. I explained our packages, etc., but I knew my words were falling on deaf ears. He just stared at me with his mouth open, breathing heavily. It didn't sound like the guy from the phone, but people can easily change the sound of their voice. He asked for the most basic bed for 5 minutes. Okay, huge red flag. Why even come in? I put him in a bed and immediately got on the phone with my friend from the other salon. She was the manager at her salon, so she decided to close shop early and race over to me just in case I needed help. I had the back door propped open as it was hot as hell in the salon, and I wanted to get cross-ventilation while I cleaned the rooms. The dryer was also running, which could have impacted my hearing. I was in one of the rooms near the front sweeping when I realized it had been 15 minutes, 10 minutes over how long he said he had wanted to be, and I hadn't heard the guy walk toward the front door yet. I had hoped he would just leave while I was sweeping in the room, so I wouldn't have to deal with him. I went down the hall, listening to the outside room he was in. The room was empty. He clearly had not used the bed, as there were no marks or anything, and the glass remained completely clean. I called out to see if he was still in the salon. "Sir?" No response. I called my friend so fast. I had a terrible feeling of dread. "Where are you?" I yelled into the phone. "I'm pulling up. Relax." "Did he leave yet?" she asked. I frantically explained to her what happened and told her loudly so he would hear if he was still in the store. "Bring your bat." My friend came in about 3 minutes later with a steel bat. In the moment it was horrifying to think about. Now it is hilarious that she is 5 foot nothing, 100 pounds, and I'm 5 foot 5 inches, 125 pounds. Together we started going through the salon rooms, one by one. We got to room 6 when we heard the back door slam shut, hard. We ran to it and locked it. We still checked the other rooms, but we knew by then what had happened. He had been hiding in one of the empty rooms and bolted when he realized what we were doing. I don't know what that guy's plans were for me that night, but I'm so thankful my friend was there to save me. With the recent Mortal Kombat 10 DLC including Jason Voorhees, it got me thinking recently about this one encounter I had with someone on Halloween when I was 14 years old. I was around that time in my life when most kids my age would stop trick-or-treating, either because they thought it was lame, or because their parents told them to stop. And in the end, we decided that this trick-or-treat be my final one. So when October 31st came, my dad helped me paint my face to look like a zombie. I figured that this costume should be simple, yet something I liked, so zombie it was. I grabbed an empty pillowcase and headed out, my parents telling me to be back by 11ish. Before you ask, yes, I was going to be trick-or-treating by myself. I was able to convince my parents that I needed to get as much candy as I could, seeing as how I wouldn't be able to be doing this again next year. So off I went, running from house to house, shoving as much candy in my pillowcase as fast as I could. By the time it got dark, my pillowcase was about 3/4 of the way filled. And I had no intent on slowing down. As I was about to walk into a new neighborhood, a black van pulled up to the curb and was about a few feet away from me. The door opened, and out of the darkness came a guy in a hockey mask and a tattered jacket, wielding a huge machete. He turned his head toward me, probably just trying to creep me out. "Nice Jason costume," I said, trying to be friendly, as I began to walk past him.
"Thanks, zombie. You want some candy? I've got bags of them,"
he said as he pulled out these little white sacks of candy. So I, being the idiot 14-year-old I was, opened my pillowcase and let him plop 2 or 3 sacks into it.
"Make sure you eat them real soon. You'll love them."
His snicker sent a chill down my spine. He left as quickly as he came, but at the time I just shrugged it off as I needed to finish trick-or-treating. I continued down the road, again going from house to house looking for more candy. About the 3rd or 4th house later, I noticed something odd. It was the same black van from before. After every house I went to, the van would get closer and closer. At around what I could only guess was 10:30, I headed home with my sack full to bursting. As I walked, the area behind me illuminated. I turned around, expecting to see a car that would soon pass me. But it was the van, brights on, and the driver in the seat was the same Jason Voorhees who gave me the candy. My heart stopped, and I broke into a mad dash back to my house, but the van easily kept up with me. Luckily, I was able to lose him by running into the woods near my house. I exited the woods that led to the side of my house and looked for the fake rock that held the spare key in our garden. After I got in, I put my candy on the kitchen table and somehow found a way to go to sleep. The next morning, when I woke up, my parents were sitting at the kitchen table, digging around through the bags of candy that Jason had given me. They started asking me where and who I got the bags from, which made me nearly freak out. I later learned that the bags of candy were nothing more than bags of prescription drugs. There were a ton of sleeping pills in them, and I finally understood his intentions. He was gonna follow me until I fell asleep, then do God knows what to me after he got me into his van. He planned on following me until I fell asleep, banking on the fact that I would eat part of his candy before I went home, then do God knows what to me after he got me into his van. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure whether that machete he had was fake or not. The police came up empty-handed, so I guess I'll never know this guy's fate. I don't feel pain in the dark. I've always been like this. I have no memory of when I first realized. I've always known that it wasn't normal. There were no awkward moments at sleepovers where I talked about it to friends, and they couldn't relate, and it was only then that I discovered I was a weirdo. I've actually never told anyone, not even my family. I don't feel pain at night. I don't feel pain in a darkened room like a movie theater before the show starts. Standing outside on a cloudy day is just too bright. I know my boundaries. I've tried them all by now. My peculiarity can come in handy. I'm not afraid to collect more firewood on a camping trip. If I stumble and fall, the most that will happen is I will rip my jeans. It impressed the boys when I was in school, doing dumb stunts while we all drank warm beer after a football game. I guess I should mention, I don't feel pain, and I don't get hurt. I don't wake up in the morning to a twisted ankle from jumping off an old train car because my crush dared me to. No bruises from bumping into my dresser when I get up at night and forget I had to rearrange the furniture. And I can get drunk or high. I've never woken up with a hangover, unless I did some day drinking and took a nap. I don't do crazy stunts anymore, though. I grew out of that. And I don't drink too much because I don't want to be that girl who's always drunk at 11 in the morning. I'll drink at bars with friends on occasion if there's something I like the taste of. I mention this because it's relevant to the actual point of why I am writing this. The real story that I want to tell. Not that long ago, I went with some girlfriends to a popular bar. They had a beer there that basically tasted like chocolate milk, and I drank quite a bit. My friends got an Uber home. I actually don't live far from where we were, and since I wasn't actually drunk from the pretty ridiculous amount of beer I'd had, I decided to walk home. I guess he had been watching us. He must have seen how much I was drinking, and yes, I did tell my friends I was buzzed, even though I could have been drinking actual chocolate milk. He probably figured that I was wasted. A perfect target. I was walking on the sidewalk and had to turn a corner. He took his chance. He grabbed me by my arm and yanked me back. He put his other hand over my chin, and he probably meant to put it over my mouth. He took his hand away from my face to try again, I guess, but I took that moment to turn around. I grabbed his wrist that was holding my arm and tried to pry it off. I dug my nails into his skin, but he wouldn't let go. My arm was twisted at an awkward angle, but I couldn't feel it. It did make it hard to pull away. I dug my nails in deeper, and he leaned in closer to me, so I headbutted him. He let go and stumbled back. I was scared, but mostly angry, so I grabbed his arms and pulled him towards me and headbutted him again. It was delicious. I mean that in a literal sense. I could taste something in my mouth. I realized it had started when I first dug my nails into him. A citrus taste, like an orange. And when our heads connected for the first time, there was the aroma and taste of fresh bread. It got stronger the second time. He was standing there, angry, bloody. He called me a bitch and then ran off. I reported the assault, but I didn't intend to follow it up. I was fine, but not everyone is like me, and I didn't want him to hurt someone else. There are so many people like him out there. Predators. The next time at the bar, I paid more attention to the people around me. I saw a man drop something into another man's drink. I got up and grabbed him by the shoulder, tipping him off his chair. When his body hit the ground, I licked my lips and tasted the faint sweetness of chocolate. The room was in an uproar. I picked up the drink and dumped it onto the floor, then told the other man what I had seen. The bartender called the cops. I don't go out every night, but most. I can't help myself. I want to know what it smells like to punch someone in the jaw. I want to taste everything. A push, a slap, a kick. What would it taste like if I bit someone? If I sink my teeth into someone's flesh, will I taste the salt of their skin, the metal of their blood? Or will it be vanilla, cherries? I feel an almost desperate sense of longing when I walk into a dark room. I hope someone yells at me, tries to grab someone's purse. I have considered carrying a knife for a while. Would stabbing a person smell like roses? I can't feel pain in the dark, but what I experience is something so special and so amazing that I can't wait for the sun to go down. Disclaimer. This is a true story and happened to me in high school. It was my senior year of high school. I had finally made some good friends and started to clog up my parents' landline and stand outside on the phone talking away. We had a ranch-style house with a fairly long driveway, and across the street from my house, and the whole block, was one giant field. There was a mansion that a local doctor owned far back in the field, just trying to paint a picture of what everything looked like. But more or less, if you stood on the driveway to my house looking across the street, there was nothing but an empty field as far as you could see. At the end of the driveway was our mailbox, which stood next to the only streetlight on the block. One night, I was standing at the end of my driveway talking on the phone to a friend, and my mother kept popping her head out of the front door, complaining for me to get off the phone and come inside, as it was late. Me, being a teenager, I gave her the "give me 5 minutes" line multiple times, and kept talking. I remember complaining about her to my friend, how she was annoying me, etc., etc. At some point, I started hearing my name being called again, only this time it was more of a loud whisper, like when you are quietly trying to get someone's attention. I distinctly remember saying to my friend something along the lines of, "My God, she's yelling at me again," and kept talking. A few minutes later, I heard my name being called again. Ignoring it, I kept talking. Again, a few moments later, I also heard, "Come over here." I turned around and realized the front door was closed. I know I thought it was odd, but not enough that it rarely registered, so I said bye to my friend and headed inside. I got inside, and my parents had just gotten to bed. I complained to my mom that she didn't have to keep yelling at me. She could have just allowed me to finish my call, etc., to which she responded that she hadn't stuck her head outside in like an hour. Cut to hours later. It was around 2 a.m., and I was in my room watching Evil Dead. Big horror fan here, and I got up and headed to the kitchen to make some ramen. My mom, who had heard me in the kitchen, yelled at me from the bedroom to make sure the front door was locked before I went to bed. I walked out of the kitchen and headed to the front door, making sure it was locked. The front door was one of those that had an oval of frosted glass in the center, so that you could look through it clearly in tiny sections. Others were frosted, so you couldn't. Anyway, I did what I normally did, and looked through one of the tiny clear sections, and habitually looked at the street lamp at the end of the driveway. Kind of like when you go to close the blinds, you habitually look outside as you do so. However, I couldn't see the street lamp. For a split second, I thought maybe the light had gone out, until whomever was standing on the other side of the glass moved to the side. I hightailed it to my parents' bedroom, waking Dad and telling him what had happened. He got out of the bed with my mom, grabbed a bat, and went outside to check. They didn't find anything, had turned on all the lights. Nothing. Creeped out, I went to bed. Next morning, I woke up and headed to my car for school. The driver's side was slightly ajar. Figured I had just moronically left it open or something the night before, and I just got in and went to school. School ends, I got home to find a police car in my driveway. Apparently, someone had broken into our garage overnight and stolen all my dad's tools and everything of worth. Not only that, the person had robbed several other homes on our block over the course of the past week. Scary as crap to realize that whomever it was literally hiding somewhere around my house, baiting me while I was on the phone, and then hours later was still outside looking through the front door. It's been 10 years, and I'm still shook.